So guys, today's video looks at the brand new Char Futur 4. This is of course the tier 9 premium medium tank from the French line. This is an absolutely fun tank to play. I have had so much fun actually giving this a go. I think I've played in the region of about 30 games within this in the last day or so. Played it, really did enjoy the tank for once. It's not usual that I actually play so many games before I actually post a gameplay video. So yeah, we've played 24 games, averaging 3,200 damage per game. Of course, having a fairly high win rate of 70%, although it is only just the beginning. 42.5% on the marks of excellence. They are kind of hard at the minute because of course it is brand new and all of the sweats like myself are deciding to play and pay for the Char Futur 4. In terms of the setup of the tank, we'll go through that real quick before we get into two absolutely amazing gameplays that show off the tank perfectly. We had one of the best games I've had in a long time in this tank, and yeah, let's get into that now. Advanced optics, 10% view range, fantastic for this tank, means you're going to be able to get decent assistance damage within this, and of course advanced concealment. Then you want gun stabilizer to improve the accuracy of the tank, to be able to dish out that 1560 alpha damage that this tank gets. It's a 4-shot auto-loading 390 damage gun. It's amazing. However, the one sacrifice for that is of course it does take 49.8 seconds to fully unload the entire clip from scratch. So yes, it takes a long time for you to be able to dish out the damage, and of course that's with a commander, so it's even longer if you don't have perks like the rapid loading, which is almost a must as your third perk every single tank that you play in. In terms of how you can actually compete in this tank, is it actually competitive? Well, I'd say it's not particularly super overpowered, which is a first for Wargaming, especially considering their recent improvements, or improvements in quotation marks, with some of the tanks that they've released. Yeah, definitely this tank is one of the more balanced tanks that's come into the game. Is it completely balanced? Well, having 1560 alpha is not necessarily balanced in too many ways, but the 4-second delay between the shells makes this tank a hell of a lot harder to actually consistently deal the 1560, and it means that if you're coming up against an opponent, you can't just all in them, because it will take you 12 seconds of traversing them, and if they have decent traverse speed, which a lot of the heavy tanks that people play actually do, yeah, this tank is definitely not going to be out-traversing them, and so you'll take damage in return, as opposed to some of the faster firing autoloaders out there. As far as the game, of course, we will get into the gameplay now and show you exactly how the Char Futur 4 plays in game, and go over some more of the statistics and how you can play it, and whether or not you should ultimately pay the full price for this. It is costing a pretty decent fortune, to be honest with you, if you want to actually pick it up. It is 19,200 gold right now, which is probably the equivalent of what, £40 in Great British pounds, and of course about $60 for those of you in America, which is, yeah, quite a meaty price overall. Let's get into the gameplay now. Let's have a look at what it can do within the game. So our first gameplay is here on Westfield. This is definitely the better of the two gameplays. We're going to have a look at exactly what this tank can do, and this is a perfect game. Not only do we get standard damage, we also get assistance damage, and yeah, it's really showing off the strengths of the tank. Of course, there are some negatives that we will highlight throughout these two gameplays, and I think that you'll kind of get to grips with that, and then you can make up your own decision as to whether or not you want to actually purchase this tank with your own real money, because of course it is quite expensive right now, and if you want to wait until it becomes cheaper, it takes 2 weeks, and then you'll be able to get it for, I believe, in the region of 15 or 17,000 gold instead of the 19,000 gold that it's costing you right now. But that's where Wargaming have kind of got you by the balls, realistically, in terms of whether you want it now or whether you want to wait 2 weeks to save yourself £4 or whatever it is. Now, as far as the gameplay in this video, well, you can see where we've come. This is a position where light tanks and medium tanks with really good view range can go, and considering the Char Futur has 440 meters of view range with the setup that we've gone through, as we've gone through in the beginning of this video, then yes, you can actually outspot a lot of opponents, even light tanks, depending on whether or not you're stationary or not. And that's kind of the key thing with the Char Futur, is remaining stationary whilst also performing adequately to be able to, you know, get around the battlefield and be mobile, so that when you reload your actual damaging gun, then you're not kind of in the middle of nowhere with no one to actually shoot. Now, 1053 damage already, so you've seen that we've hit 3 shots, and then we hit the Object 260 there, set him on fire, and that's an extra 600 damage pretty much. Now, a Super Conqueror and an M103 have pushed up into that position over there. We've got a G-Saw over to the left, and of course, if you see in the bottom right hand corner in the map, then you'll see the top left of the map shows that the majority of their team have actually pushed up to the hill area above us. As far as what we need to do in this game, well, we need to get rid of the Super Conqueror and the M103 and that G-Saw as fast as possible, so that we can then turn around, help out our team behind us, and yeah, we should be able to do primarily, or hopefully, much better. Now, we've dealt 2 damaging shots there to the Super Conqueror, and we're just now trying to feather a shot on the M103. Unfortunately, we don't manage to get it, but we have picked up, what, 2,338 damage already. Unfortunately, no spotting damage, which is something that really does boost up the amount of damage that you can do, or the combined damage, and so you're going to go up on your marks of excellence much faster if you manage to get that as well. Now, we've realised it's probably time I should potentially try and help out these guys up on this hill. If they're pushing up on the wrong side of the hill, then we'll be able to help with, like this E5. Unfortunately, we weren't reloaded, and that is another thing that I find a little bit frustrating about this tank, as of course you do have an almost 40-second reload to be able to actually deal your damage, which makes it somewhat annoying. However, when you are reloaded, the 1560 Alpha comes in so clutch, because sometimes you think, oh god, I'm only on 1000 and a little bit of damage at the end of the game, there's not enough I can do, and then you come across a full health tank at the end of the game, and you're very, very satisfied with being able to crunch on those hit points and deal that 1560 to bring your grand total up to a more reasonable amount of about 2,700. That's happened a few times, at least for me, and that's kind of where I feel this tank kind of becomes, it's a good thing and a bad thing, because often this 30-second reload, where you're literally doing absolutely nothing but just trying to avoid the enemies, becomes a little bit frustrating, because you feel like you could have impacted the game more in a different tank, and so yeah, it's kind of a bit strange, I guess, or at least for me anyway. I know that yes, you can still real focus on actually spotting enemy tanks to be able to get assistance damage during that period where you are reloading, which is something I usually do within this tank, and hence why we went for a more focus on the actual advanced concealment and the advanced vision to be able to do that during that period of downtime where we can't actually do anything. Now, we managed to get one into the M103, who's now decided that he's going to look at us rather than the people straight ahead of him, and so we're going to shut him down and get him out of the game. Now, that is perfect, because now what that means is we can focus on the other flank, and what we're going to do is get up into this bush. The opponents aren't going to be able to spot us because we've got great concealment, and so now it is time that we dish out the damage as quickly as possible. Unfortunately for us, we don't actually manage to get 3 shots to be able to finish off the Action X, and maybe that'll come back to bite us on the arse later on, but guess we'll have to wait and see. Now, 4,400 damage is a good game in the Char Futur, depending on, you know, whether or not you're like a super good player, but for me, that was a very decent game. It's not one that you tend to get all of the time. I'm averaging about 3.2k damage in the Char Futur, but certainly if I was to call a good game, it would probably be in the region of about, yeah, 5,500 damage is a really good game in the Char Futur. And so what we're doing now is just trying to spot for our people that are behind us on the ridgeline, so that we can basically get some more assistance damage, and so I can go up on the marks of excellence. Now with the Centurion Action X is there, we tried to get a shot on him, unfortunately we couldn't manage to, and so he's putting pressure on our heavy tank to the right of us. We're going to try and spot again. The E5 there tries to get a shot on us, but we try and get a shot on him. Unfortunately it's just kind of a bit stale right now, and we've got to do something, try and help someone as we try and go for the Action X and miss again. We're getting super unlucky with the Action X, and so yeah, we're just trying to dish out that damage as fast as possible and try and make something of a game, even if it looks like we're not going to particularly win very easily. It's 6 versus 4 at the end of the game. We've of course got an artillery, and a lot of our tanks are on low health, as with the opponent's team, so feasibly we could win. But it really does rely on me. Potentially I am on full health. I have the ability to trade. The Super Conqueror's on a nice chunky amount of hit points. The Action X on their team is on very low hit points. It's a one shot, at least unless we super low roll, which yes you can do now. Which is really annoying. We've got 2 tank destroyers. I don't know what the other one is currently. Of course we could look on the stats page, but there you go. The other tank destroyer has now come. It's the STRV 103B who's deciding he's going to try and put pressure onto us. But however, we are not stupid. What we are going to do, we're going to try and unfortunately for him he bounced off us, which was really strange. But yeah, now we're in the perfect position in an autoloader. We don't have to do anything. We can just sit here. We can just put pressure onto him. We can just fire all of our shots, dealing 1550 damage to him. And so yeah, he's in a bit of a disappointing position. Now what you see, what we did there is actually pushed underneath him, which allowed us to get the kind of ramming damage, or damage from ram, onto him, which allowed us to get a really nice amount of damage onto him. So now the Batchet 15555 is now pushing up to us, who it just got unfortunate, and now we are in a nice position to be able to take him out. Unfortunately what we do is make a massive misplay here, and yeah, he's now aiming at us. He manages to pen us for 1200 damage. He must have been firing HE, and we get shut down by the Centurion Action X. And within this game I did not realise just how much damage I picked up. I thought we were going to be absolutely fine. What I should have done there, if I was going to be particularly really honest, I should have literally just gone down the hill. The artillery wouldn't have been able to get a shot on me. We would have taken him out, or at least then spotted the Action X if he fired at me, been able to try and take out the Action X or get into cover, deal with the artillery, deal with the Action X, and then move on to the E3, which is of course the non-turreted tank destroyer. Unfortunately for me, I played a little bit bad right at the end of the game, which yeah, kind of was annoying. However, we did make it onto the podium spot, coming number 3, even though we lost 7,075 damage, 1,423 assistance damage, bringing the grand total up to 8,500 nearly combined damage. Of course, a mastery badge, a kamikaze for the STRV 103, fire for effect, bruiser, arsonist, we got high caliber, and of course 5 enemies destroyed within the game, making this definitely one of the better games I've had in a long time, especially in a tier 9, because I don't play tier 9 too much, but this one definitely makes me want to play tier 9 more. Now, coming off of the back of that devastating loss for us within the Westfield map, we're now moving on to Malinovka, which I actually had a pretty decent game. I wouldn't say that it's the highest damage game that we've had, but combined it was a very nice score, and it certainly was one worthy of showing off the spotting potential that you can have within the Char Futur 4, which is one of the key aspects of the tank. It is one of those stealthy, concealed tanks that just doesn't really get spotted if you play it correctly. And of course, yes, you can get spotted, but you do have to kind of make a mistake, or you do have to kind of trade off the fact that you fired or something and to be able to get spotted. So that's kind of where this tank becomes more interesting to play, because of course you have the trade-off between, do you want damage or do you want assistance damage, because if you fire you're going to be getting spotted, and then of course you aren't going to be able to do as much. Now you see we spotted the Batchat 25T there, and that is kind of one of the bits in the game that I was very pleased about, because what happens now is the artillery hits him, sets him on fire, and then the Fatherland on our team takes out the rest of his hit points, taking the assistance damage already up to 1,700 total spotting damage, which 1 minute and 30 seconds into the game is absolutely nothing shambolic at all. Now, knowing that the CS-63 is moving up onto this kind of area of the map, we're going to push down and we're going to try and take him out early on, because the faster we actually get this tank out of the game, the quicker we're going to be able to turn around, and potentially, if there's a lot of tanks moving on that southerly flank, then we're going to get taken out very, very easily. We actually track the CS there, which is really nice. He gets then hit and set on fire, meaning that we're getting even more assistance damage. We hit him again with a final shot, but it does bounce. And so yes, we did only manage to pick up 2 damaging shots, 727 total, meaning that we did low roll quite a bit actually overall between the 2 shots. And yeah, we have picked up 2,900 combined damage, which is no bad game already. Now, I'm not saying that this is particularly the best kind of result that you can imagine within the Char Futur 4, but what happens next is actually just a kind of, you've got to use your brain. I don't think the Char Futur is necessarily a tank that you want to be using if you're a brand new player to World of Tanks, especially if you're watching this video and you're looking at the Char Futur thinking, oh wow, it's a fantastic tank. Eclipse had a game of 7,000 damage within it. Does that mean that I can have a 7,000 damage game? Well, no, because I got fairly lucky within that game that no light tanks were really within the game to kind of counter spot me, and yeah, I got fairly lucky within the game. The Char Futur is not something that happens that regularly. There's a lot of games where you feel like the reload and the DPM have been so poor that actually you're kind of left with a too fast of a win or too fast of a loss, so that you can't get out those 5k damage games that other tanks would have done much more consistently. And that's the kind of problem that I've been facing, at least with the Char Futur 4. Of course, what we're doing now is just being a little bit more passive. We're on a reload. We had, 15 seconds. We're just waiting it out, seeing what the FV4005 does. We're going to hit him once, and then our teammate in the Progetto then takes him out for the final shot. We've now got 3 shots in the clip, and this is where the Progettos, or the Char Futurs even, sorry, I got confused there, but yeah, that is where the Char Futur 4's DPM kind of becomes even worse, is when you only fire 1 shot and you only get 1 damaging shot, because what happens then? Well, you'll basically become a single shotgun that then has a 30-second reload after you fired a couple of single shots. So trying to get yourself into the position is the key thing within autoloaders. As I'm sure many of you know, if you've ever played an autoloader, positioning is the key thing, because yes, you could be reloaded, but if multiple tanks are coming at you all in one, then, you know, even if you're the best player in the world, you probably aren't going to be able to take them all out or get away enough. So making sure that when you're reloaded, you can get into a position, deal your damage, and then bugger off, essentially. Yeah, that's kind of what you want to be doing in a autoloader. Of course, with the Char Futur, you've got the mobility to be able to get away, which is something that some autoloaders, things like the T57 Heavy, things like the T77, the Tier 8 American heavy tank. Of course, you've then got things like the Batchat 25T AP, which is very, very similar to this tank. In fact, I don't know which one I'd rather pick. Would you rather have the Batchat 25T AP that has the mobility over this tank? Probably doesn't have as much of a camo concealment factor and spotting potential as this one does, but of course you get the better gun. However, it's probably much worse in terms of its accuracy, and yeah, you have the option to choose that 240 alpha damage gun rather than the 390 that this tank gets, so it's kind of a bit of a trade-off. Which one would you rather have? And I think for me personally, this tank with the ability to be able to spot and stay undetected and move around the map and just have a bit more strategic element to the tank, I much prefer the Char Futur 4. But of course, if you are interested in more aggressive, fast traverse and movement, then yeah, maybe you will want to be using things like the Batchat 25T AP, and of course that is free as well. It won't be costing you £40 like the Char Futur will. Do I think that the Char Futur overall is necessarily the tank that you probably want to pick up if you're a more experienced player? Well, yeah, potentially. I think it has everything that you will need. It's got the spotting, it's got the damage, it's got the ability to then move around the map. You also have kind of the trollish armor. You're not going to be bouncing anything. Or at least not for the most part, unless they hit some weird angle. We went for a shot on the Borsig there, but unfortunately we didn't manage to get him. He must have moved. We only did a critical damage of 2. If you then take the information that we just got, the 2 critical damage means that you've only damaged a module. So if I hit his tracks, it meant that we didn't actually destroy the tracks. If we destroy a track of a vehicle, it actually gives you 5 points, or 5 critical damage points, rather than just the 2. We do unfortunately take too much of a wide berth there, meaning that we do get hit by the Borsig as we kind of straighten up, and that's something that you can take advantage of in tanks, is making sure that instead of having a kind of straight line away from an opponent, you're moving kind of sideways and then changing the direction, kind of snaking around. It makes it a lot harder to just aim at you, and if they're auto aiming, they definitely won't hit you if you're traveling sideways rather than straight away from them, because if you're auto aiming and they're straight away, then you will be able to hit more consistently. In terms of the damage within this game, we've picked up nearly 6,000 total, which is really nice. Of course, we've got the Progetto there coming up. 3,300 spotting damage, 2,700 actual damage, and of course we do spot the Progetto, who's now moved over there. We're going to try and go for the tracking shot. Unfortunately we don't manage to do it, but then we're going to pick him up for the rest of his hit points, and meaning that we did manage to have a fairly decent game within the Char Futur. I had quite a few more gameplays with 4k damage plus, but we won't go into them because they're just way too long, and it's going to be a video of like 35 minutes, and I'm sure most of you don't really have that much time. It's probably getting long enough as it is. And yes, we did pick up 3,312 damage, 3,292 assistance, and we came top, of course, with a result like that and some decent base experience. 48,000 credits made because we didn't fire too much premium ammunition, which is one of the negatives of if you fire the premium within this tank, is yes, you do have 4 shells, and it's going to cost you, I think, 4,800 silver per shell, which when you fully unload, it's going to cost you quite a lot. And if you're constantly doing that every game, you're going to be losing credits very easily. There's only one game, I think, that I actually decided to load the premium. That was because there was an E100. And yeah, that kind of pretty much shows you how good the standard penetration and the actual gun or main armament of this tank is. So there we go, the Char Futur 4. What do I think as an overarching opinion on the tank? Is it overpowered? No. Is it consistent? Yes. Or could it deal with some more balancing? Probably not. I think it's in a very good balanced place, which can't be said for very many tanks within World of Tanks. And of course, if you want to choose the more mobile option that doesn't cost you 19,200 gold, I would just go with the Batchat 25 TAP, the tier 9 French medium on the tech tree. Yeah, that's kind of pretty much the same sort of tank if you use the 390 alpha damage gun on that rather than the 240. Very similar. But if you are interested in just paying to be able to get a fairly decent tank, then yeah, I would recommend this tank. But of course, take into note the negatives of the tank and the positives, and decide if your gameplay really does fit the Char Futur overall. Thanks very much for watching. Of course, let me know what you think of the Char Futur. Have you picked it up yourself? Do you already know how it kind of plays? Let me know if you would change anything about the tank, and if you would actually say it's overpowered or underpowered. How do you feel about the tank? Me personally, as you've just heard, I think it's in a pretty good place. Thanks very much for watching. Of course, thanks very much to the channel members, and thank you for sticking around and just supporting the channel. There's 6,000 now of you, which is unbelievable. Yeah, definitely really do appreciate everyone's help, and everyone's just support really has been amazing. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you in the next video. Goodbye.